For 35 years, Soul Train wasn't just a TV show. It was the vibe, the moves, the music, the magic, the heartbeat of black culture. But in 2006, that heartbeat stopped. No farewell, no final dance, just silence. Then came the whispers. One last episode. An episode so wild, so out of control, it never made it to air. What really happened inside that studio that night? Why did a show that ruled pop culture for decades vanish without a trace? The truth is buried in that lost footage. A moment so chaotic it didn't just end Soul Train, it erased an era. Soul Train movement. After working as a traffic officer, a salesman, and more blue-collar jobs, he took a short broadcasting course that would change his life. Soon after, he was hired as a reporter for WCIU-TV, a local Chicago station. That's where he first started shaping his dream. It gang for Harold Melvin and the Mighty Blue Notes, a new kind of TV show that celebrated black music, culture, and style. That dream became Soul Train. It first aired on August 17, 1970 in Chicago. The show featured live performances from local musicians and dancers, and it immediately stood out. Just a year later, on October 2nd, 1971, Soul Train went national with sponsors like Sears and Johnson Products backing it. From that moment on, television was never the same. With its lively music, bold fashion, and signature dance styles, Soul Train quickly became a cultural phenomenon. Magnificently successful album that bears his name. Let's get some hands together for Jermaine Jackson. The show hosted legendary artists from James Brown and Aretha Franklin to Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson, and the Jackson 5. In later years, artists like L, Cool J, and Mary J. Blige also graced its stage. But Soul Train didn't just showcase singers. It gave rise to dancers who later became stars, including Rosie Perez, Jody Watley, and Jeffrey Daniel, the man who taught Michael Jackson the moonwalk. One of the show's most beloved moments was the Soul Train line, where dancers formed two lines and took turns showing off their best moves down the center aisle. It wasn't just about fun. It was about confidence, creativity, and self-expression. For many, Soul Train was more than a show. It was a weekly celebration of identity, pride, and community. Don Cornelius wasn't just the host. He was the creative heart of it all. Calm, confident, and thoughtful. He shaped the show's entire look and feel. He believed television should represent every culture truthfully and positively. You have 60 seconds to correctly unscramble the name of a famous public official. Okay, you two jump on that. We're going to jump on this. The whispers and the beat goes on. Over 3 decades, Soul Train aired more than 1,000 episodes, becoming the longest-running music TV show of its time. It turned into a brand with music awards, fashion events, and more. Cornelius became one of the most influential figures in black entertainment. But as Soul Train reached new heights, it also faced challenges. And the next chapter would test everything he had built. Rivalry behind the scenes. We deserve a choice of entertainment. And if we're getting numbers, that means we're giving people something that they want. When Soul Train first hit television screens in the early 70s, it was impossible not to notice the similarities to American Bandstand. Both shows had young dancers, big smiles, and the hottest hits of the moment. But for Don Cornelius, Soul Train wasn't just another music program. It was a cultural revolution. To him, it wasn't about copying anyone. It was about giving black artists and audiences a space where they could truly shine. Every episode celebrated pride, creativity, and the richness of black culture at a time when representation on television was painfully limited. Cornelius admitted that American Bandstand and its host Dick Clark had influenced him early on. He respected Clark's work and what he had achieved in music television. But as Soul Train grew, the constant comparisons began to wear him down. How do you handle the criticism some blacks make that without due respect to the misguided person that might make such a comment? It's unfortunate. Cornelius wanted people to see that his show stood for something deeper. It wasn't about imitation. It was about identity. Unlike Bandstand, which had struggled with integration issues in its early years, Soul Train was unapologetically black. It wasn't just music. It was fashion, language, and attitude. It made Saturday mornings feel like a celebration of a culture too often ignored by mainstream media. Then in the year 1973, things took a dramatic turn. Dick Clark launched a new show called Soul Unlimited, clearly designed to compete with Soul Train. Getting that stuff tough enough on the Soul Train. Says all he wants to be is happy and free like a natural man. It had a similar setup. Black dancers, R&B performers, and the same high-energy vibe. But this time, the audience didn't applaud. Instead, there was outrage. People saw Soul Unlimited as a blatant attempt to cash in on the success of Soul Train and to profit from a movement that Cornelius had started from scratch. Don Cornelius didn't stay silent. Furious and determined, he accused Clark and the network of trying to edge out one of the only black-owned national TV programs at the time. Going to show you more than once or twice, so you had to really keep up. You couldn't slack at all. With help from civil rights leader Jesse Jackson, Cornelius publicly challenged the move, calling it cultural exploitation. The pressure worked. After only a few episodes, ABC canceled Soul Unlimited. For many, it was a victory not just for Cornelius, but for every black creator fighting for fair representation in entertainment. Surprisingly, Cornelius and Clark didn't stay rivals forever. Time softened their feud, and they eventually worked together on several television specials that celebrated R&B and soul music. A peaceful truce between two men who had once gone head-to-head on national TV. A fun career was what ended up happening to me. I loved every minute of it. But just when Don Cornelius thought he had won, a much bigger threat was waiting. One that would challenge everything he had built. The change of attitude. Don Cornelius was known for running Soul Train with a firm hand. He didn't just oversee what aired. He controlled nearly every detail from the dancers' costumes to their choreography. Everything had to meet his high standards. Rosie Perez, who danced on the show for several seasons, once said Cornelius didn't allow suggestive moves or anything that went against the image he wanted. She even had to change her dance style because he felt it didn't fit the show's artistic direction. The initial role that they offered me, I turned down because it wasn't enough for me to do. And I said, but good luck. And I started crying at the end of the day. But behind the glitz, not everything was as smooth as it looked. Many dancers later revealed they weren't paid for their performances. Appearing on national TV was considered an opportunity, not a job. For some, it was a career-launching moment. But others felt their talent and creativity were being used without fair recognition or reward. The biggest clash, however, came from the music itself. By the late 1980s, hip-hop was taking over the airwaves. But Cornelius wasn't a fan. He believed the genre often highlighted negative aspects of the black community, such as violence and harsh language. In a 1992 interview, he said, "I don't want my show to be overtaken by sounds that don't represent anything positive from a bandstand or a Soul Training Music Awards. Different from is the character of the show, the style of the show." His comments split opinions. Some agreed, but many younger artists and fans thought he was out of touch with the times. While Cornelius hesitated to embrace hip-hop, new shows like Yo MTV, Raps, and Rap City stepped in to fill the gap. Stars like Tupac Shakur, Nas, and Snoop Dogg rarely appeared on Soul Train, which caused younger viewers to drift away. Ratings dropped steadily from over 4 to near 2.1. Many local stations started moving or replacing the show with fresher content. In 1993, Don Cornelius stepped down as host after 23 years on screen. New hosts like Shamar Moore, Maestro Clark, and Dorian Gregory tried to carry the torch, but none could match Cornelius's calm, commanding presence. Is this one taken from Quincy Jones' latest album? The album entitled Body Heat. He calls this one Boogie Joe the Grinder. Attempts to modernize the show, new hosts, new sets, and even more hip-hop acts couldn't stop its decline. Last episode banned forever. By the mid-2000s, Soul Train had lost much of its old rhythm. Production had slowed down. Longtime staff were leaving, and rising costs made it hard to keep things running smoothly. Don Cornelius, once the show's driving force, had stepped back almost completely, rarely making public appearances or comments. What had once been a proud celebration of black culture was slowly becoming a memory. The show still aired weekly, but the spark was gone. Younger artists looked for fresher platforms, and new dancers rarely stayed for long. It was clear that Soul Train had entered a period of stagnation, a shadow of its former glory. Then came 2006, the year everything quietly fell apart. That year, during what was supposed to be a normal taping in Los Angeles, something unusual happened. No one ever shared exactly what went on behind the scenes, but that day marked the end of Soul Train. The episode was never released and was reportedly banned forever. According to accounts from people who were there, the atmosphere on set that day was tense. The production crew had been reshuffled at the last minute, and the guest lineup was poorly organized. There was confusion, frustration, and no clear direction from the executives. Some claimed that Don Cornelius was backstage, not officially working on the show, but watching, and he wasn't happy with what he saw. He openly expressed disappointment in how far Soul Train had drifted from its original purpose. The episode was set to feature a rising hip-hop artist, but the taping started almost an hour late due to disagreements between the artist team and the show's staff. When the performance finally began, it crossed the boundaries that Soul Train had long respected. The choreography and visuals were more provocative than anything the show had ever aired. Cornelius reportedly demanded that the editing process be stopped immediately. He then held an emergency meeting with the show's distribution partners. Soon after, Tribune Entertainment, one of the main distributors, pulled out. Without their support, Soul Train could no longer continue its national broadcasts. Within 3 weeks, nearly half of the local stations stopped airing the show. There was no official announcement, but insiders knew it was over. The website stopped updating. Networks filled its time slot with other shows, and production was canceled indefinitely. Rumors spread about the lost episode being the reason for the show's sudden end. Though it never aired, footage from that final taping reportedly still exists. Eerie silence that followed. When Soul Train's final controversial episode was taped, no one expected it to mark the show's true end. Yet, what fans later called the cursed performance didn't just disrupt a single recording. It closed the curtain on one of the most iconic programs in American